Now, when Breonna's story first came out in March, there was a lot of misinformation being spread due to the family of Breonna and the attorneys. They had claimed that it was a botched raid, that the police were at the wrong house, that they were looking for another person who they already had in custody, and that they didn't announce themselves, making it seem like the police had really done a messed up job and she wouldn't have been dead had their information been correct. Now, all of this had transpired because the police had charged Kenneth Walker with attempted murder. And the prosecutor had stated that if it hadn't had been for Mr. Walker's actions, an officer wouldn't have almost been killed and Breonna would not be dead, basically saying the charges should remain. Now, Kenneth Walker's attorney's argument was that even though Kenneth's actions did cause those things, Mr. Walker was acting in self-defense, believing someone was breaking into the home. And had the police announced themselves while knocking, none of this would have happened. So the police were at fault. And this is how the battle of who was at fault began. Now, in the meantime, while all of this was going on, everybody else's attention was on the Ahmaud Arbery situation that had happened. Now, there were really no protests going on that much for Ahmaud Arbery because of COVID-19, but he was still getting some heavy media attention. Now, right behind him, we had George Floyd happen, and this is what caused all of the protesting to begin. Now, 3 days after George Floyd's death is when they finally released the 911 call of Kenneth Walker, which started the protest in Louisville.
Us to act crazy. We not doing that. Move back, move back, move back, move back, move back, move back, move back.
Now, on the same day of the protest, Mayor Fisher suspended no-knock warrants, telling Breonna Taylor protesters, "I hear you." By May 30th, 2020, Mayor Fisher had to again address the public after Breonna Taylor protests had escalated. On June 1st, 2020, David McCaddy's shooting happened. On June 1st, 2020, David McCaddy, an African-American man, was fatally shot by the Kentucky National Guard in Louisville during protests over the deaths of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. The Louisville Metro Police Department and National Guard were in the area to enforce a curfew. According to officials, the police and soldiers were fired upon by McCaddy, and 2 Louisville officers and 2 National Guardsmen returned fire. McCaddy was killed by a shot fired from a guardsman. The body cams of the police involved were not activated during the shooting, which is in violation of department policy. During that same day, Louisville police chief was fired because the officers were not wearing body-worn cameras during this shooting. Now, the protesters were calling for policy changes like reining in police use of force to slashing police budgets. They also wanted to ban the use of no-knock warrants. And last but not least, they wanted criminal charges to be pressed against the officers in Breonna Taylor's shooting. On June 11, 2020, one of the biggest demands that the protesters wanted, which was the banning of no-knock warrants, happened. A law called Breonna's Law was passed in Louisville, which banned no-knock warrants. And I say that this is one of the bigger and more important demands because given the situation that happened with Breonna, The no-knock warrant seemed to have been the cause of the problem, which led to this situation happening in the first place. And it would not be the first time. So clearly, no-knock warrants are an issue, and they should be banned, and they should change their policies of how they intend to do raids in the future.
Beyonce is calling for justice in the death of Breonna Taylor, an African-American woman who was killed by police after they went into the wrong home. Melissa, good morning. So tell me a little bit about Beyonce and how she wrote a letter to the Kentucky Attorney General.
Good morning, Robin. That's right. Beyonce wrote an open letter and posted it on her website on Sunday. And it is an open letter addressed to the Kentucky Attorney General, Daniel Cameron. And in the letter, she goes into detail about Breonna Taylor's death. She points out it's been 3 months since Breonna Taylor's death and says that the officers involved should face prosecution. Beyonce also calls for an investigation into the police department's handling of the incident. Beyonce says that these actions would, quote, demonstrate the value of a Black woman's life. Now, Louisville police fatally shot 26-year-old Taylor during a no-knock warrant raid on the wrong apartment. No drugs were found. The suspect had already been arrested. The Kentucky Attorney General's office told CNN they are aware of Beyonce's letter.
Now, up until this point, none of the officers had been fired or charged. They had just been reassigned. But on June 23rd, Detective Brett Hankinson was terminated because he violated rules and regulations and for use of deadly force when he wantonly and blindly shot 10 rounds into the apartment of Breonna Taylor, meaning he wasn't firing at an actual threat. It was also because some of his rounds traveled into the apartment next to Mrs. Taylor, endangering 3 lives in that apartment. He had also previously been disciplined for reckless conduct that injured an innocent person. On June 25th, Louisville protesters were pushing for criminal charges against officers. A rally was held in Frankfort, the state capital, featuring celebrities including the rapper Common. It was aimed at pressing State Attorney General Daniel Cameron to prosecute the officers. This is the reason why criminal charges cannot be pressed against the officers. According to Kentucky law, the use of force by officers Mattingly and Cosgrove was justified to protect themselves. From the evidence, it's clear that they only shot in self-defense in response to the boyfriend Kenneth Walker shooting at them first. This justification bars them from being able to pursue criminal charges against the officers, which is almost the exact same reason why they cannot charge Kenneth with attempted murder for shooting the officer in the leg. Both parties shot in self-defense. Therefore, what occurred was an accidental tragedy. Now, I know this may be hard to accept for a lot of people, but in situations like these, it is very important we think logically and not emotionally. And the fact of the matter is, if Kenneth Walker had not shot at officers first, they wouldn't have shot back in self-defense, and they wouldn't be able to use self-defense as a defense. Unfortunately, that is not what happened here. Even though the boyfriend's shooting was justified, and that's why he can't be charged for firing his weapon, it's the exact same reason for why they cannot charge the officers. Everybody reacted in self-defense. And I understand the police were, for argument's sake, the aggressor in the situation, but they were in fact in the process of doing a job that allowed them to be the aggressor due to the no-knock warrant that was granted to them by a judge. There is no justice in this situation because no matter what, a life was taken and it's not coming back. So the focus should have been solely on how to prevent something like this from happening again. And that would be changing things like no-knock warrants and raid procedures, something they already granted in Louisville and named after Breonna. Even though Breonna's death was a tragedy, it was not the first of this kind. So instead of focusing on the negative, focus on the positive, that this highlighted a very real problem that needed to be addressed, as well as all of the other unjustified shootings. And your calls for change did actually produce one. And to top it off, they used the name y'all wanted them to say.
They didn't die in vain, so you better say her name, yeah. Say her name, you better say it. Say her name. Say her name, better say her name. Say Breonna. Breonna. Say Breonna. Breonna. Say Breonna. Breonna.
On September 15th, 2020, Breonna Taylor's family received a $12 million settlement from the city of Louisville. The agreement, which did not require the city to acknowledge any wrongdoing, was sizable, with her family receiving more than double the amount paid to the relatives of Eric Garner, the New York man who died in a police chokehold in 2014.
The grand jury voted to return an indictment against Detective Hankinson for 3 counts of wanton endangerment for wantonly placing the 3 individuals in apartment 3 in danger of serious physical injury or death.
A grand jury indicted Louisville police detective Brett Hankinson in connection with the death of Breonna Taylor on Wednesday, charging him with 3 counts of wanton endangerment.
The charge of wanton endangerment in the first degree is a Class D felony, and if found guilty, the accused can serve up to 5 years for each count.
Kentucky Attorney General Daniel Cameron announced the news during a press conference.
It's important to note that he is presumed innocent until proven guilty.
The 2 other officers involved in the case, Jonathan Mattingly and Miles Cosgrove, were not charged, and none of the officers were charged for their role in Taylor's death.
According to Kentucky law, the use of force by Mattingly and Cosgrove was justified to protect themselves.
We demand justice! And we want it now! We want it now!
I love the black community. I don't know enough about it. I heard a decision was just made. We've been together here, and so we haven't discussed it. But after I see what the decision is, I will have a comment on it. Okay? Thank you all very much.
I have not seen the report. I was told going in that there is one charge against one of the officers. I don't know the details. I'm going to try to find that out on the plane, and I'll comment for you. But I feel my heart goes out to her mother, and I understand there's a protest they're starting, or they're going to start, or and I just want to. Pardon me?
They're expected tonight.
Well, they should be peaceful. Do not sully her memory or her mother's by engaging in any violence. It's totally inappropriate for that to happen. And she wouldn't want it, nor would her mother. So I hope they do that calmly.
Camera alone didn't fail her, but it ended with the lack of investigation failed her. The officer who told a lie to obtain a search warrant failed her. The judge who signed the search warrant failed her. The terrorist who broke down her door failed her. The system as a whole has failed her. You didn't just rob me of my family, you robbed the world of a queen. A queen willing to do a job that most of us could never stomach to do. A queen willing to build up anyone around her. A queen who was starting to pave her path. I hope you never have to know the pain of knowing your child is in need and help and you're not able to give them. I hope you never hear the sounds of hearing someone cry and beg for your child to get help and she never receives help. Those cries was ignored. I hope you never know the pain of your child being murdered 191 days in a row.
Breonna Taylor's entire family is heartbroken, devastated, and outraged, and confused, and bewildered, just like all of us, as to what did Kentucky Attorney General Daniel Cameron present to the grand jury? Did he present any evidence on Breonna Taylor's behalf? We are standing here today united in solidarity, declaring and demanding that he release the transcripts of the grand jury proceedings so we can know if there was anybody giving a voice to Breonna Taylor. Just know we love you, Tamika Palmer. We're standing with you.